If you knew you were enough, what would your life look like? What would love look like? This is the Enough Factor broadcast, where we're redefining what makes you enough in life and in love. Now here's your host, Suzette Birnall. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Enough Factor podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's season 2, and I'm so excited to bring you weekly episodes, some solo and some with some fabulous guests. Guests who are pushing the envelope from enough to more than enough. If this is your first time, a hearty Southern girl, welcome. And I want to tell you a little bit about the mission of this podcast. It's to inspire you to evaluate where your self-definition comes from and to redefine for yourself what makes you enough. To examine what I call 3 critical factors of enoughness. And they are your voice, your value, and your vision. With this podcast, our intention is to shake you awake to who you are, whose you are, and why you are. To help me is none other than the host of the Rosh Show Live, Roshanda Pratt, known as a digital media pioneer with 20 years experience as a news producer on the front lines of history. Roshanda is on a mission to raise up messengers who will shape the narrative through media. She is a respected news producer, live stream expert, speaker, storyteller, and first lady of visibility. Roshanda uses her passion for media to spread the empower brands to be seen, heard, and paid. She has been featured on CBS's The Talk and The Tamron Hall Show. Roshanda is the author of CEO of Live Video, a #1 Amazon bestseller. She produces and hosts a Facebook Live show every Monday night called The Rose Show Live. When she's not going live, she's creating her greatest story with her husband and children in South Carolina. So please join me in welcoming Roshanda to Enough Factor podcast. Welcome, Roshanda.
Hi, good morning. So glad to be here.
Having you to help me to amplify some voices this morning.
That's right.
Hey, it's a genuine gift to our listeners, and I cannot wait for them to hear you.
I'm excited. Thank you so much for being here. Love your mission and what you're doing, because definitely we're in a time in the season where people deserve to be seen, heard, and yes, paid.
Oh, girl, I love it. As a matter of fact, prior to coming on, I was listening to your YouTube live, the visibility one.
Yes.
Girl, I said I'm gonna have to send her an offering. I'm gonna have to send her an offering.
Wow.
It was so funny because I was getting ready, but it was just something in the way that you delivered that made me really take stock of giving myself permission. I thought I was giving myself permission.
Right.
But I really had to really take stock of it. And I said, you know what? I got to raise the level.
I think sometimes when it comes to being more than enough, I think all of us, no matter what stage of life that you're in, whether you're the beginning, you're the intermediate, or you're the pro, I think everybody every now and then needs to revisit their own visibility factor. They need to revisit their permission stance. Like, I just did that this morning. And when I think about it, I realized that there was a project that I should have had done a long time ago. And being very transparent, I realized that I am several months behind on this project because I allowed someone to give me permission for what God had already said yes to.
Mm.
And what's happened is now I'm playing catch up, and it could have really served in this hour and what's going on in our country and what's going on in the world. But now I'm having to play catch up because took I allowed someone else to say it was okay for me to do what I already knew I should have been doing. So
That
I think
oh
everybody needs to revisit the fact and say, okay, where in my life or what's going on in my life that I am still saying, can you give me permission to do this? Even though you know you already have permission to do so.
yeah, that was it. That was it because I really, even though I've worked for myself for a while,
Mm-hmm.
I still feel like hard grained
Mm-hmm.
in me is I can give myself permission to help somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
to work for somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But when it comes to giving myself permission to bring my full self to the table, no excuses, 100, playing full out,
Right.
I still get a little hesitant at times.
Yes. And I think that's also my friend has a saying. She read this in a book one time. She says, it's the practical that keeps you humble.
Mm.
And I think the reason why we all have to revisit our permission factor is because I think that's also a way that keeps you humble of not thinking like, well, I already got it together. I've arrived. It keeps you in that place of no. You know what else? I think it also keeps you still tender towards people who you're also trying to release, people you're
Mm-hmm.
also trying to push, because you can say, no, I understand exactly where you're coming from. Been there, done that, was the president one time of the Fear Factor Club. But now I'm telling you what I know to be true. I think it's a daily thing that you walk through.
And another thing that hit me when I was listening to you and even listening to you now is that permission factor is very needed, especially for us high achieving or mission driven women, because we can
Hmm.
get really into busyness
Yes.
as a way of avoiding giving ourselves permission to really show up the way we're supposed to show up to
Hmm.
make a greater impact. Because I'm the queen of busy. I can sit right here and I had to really check myself. I'm like, girl, how many times are you going to redo that website? How many times?
Right.
Because you're avoiding the very thing that you're in business to do. And you're in business to make an impact. And yes, my sister, friends, and brothers, to get paid. And it's like
Right.
we do everything to be busy at things that don't bring us revenue
Hmm.
than to really give ourselves permission to do those things that are really going to maximize
Right.
our impact and, yes, our revenues.
That's so true. I remember a couple of years ago having a conversation with myself, and
Yes.
talk to myself a lot, and I had to confront somebody on my team. And when I say confront, not in a malicious or ugly way, but there were just some things that were going on that just were not aligning with my mission, was not aligning with what our goal is as a company. And I had to have a conversation with them, and I was avoiding it for days. I was like, oh, I started it, but then I would kind of shrink back. And I just remember that still small voice saying to me, you keep telling people, our culture talks about being a boss, being a boss. He's like, this is what it means to be a boss. Be the CEO of your company and have the tough conversation. And it's necessary. And I think a lot of times we make excuses and we do things to say, oh, I'm trying to make this better. You know, you're not trying to make it better. If you have went through this website 10 times trying to nitpick everything to strive for perfection. Perfection is a lie. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. And I'm going to finally launch the thing, and we'll just continue to work on it or in it as we launch it. I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
about how long it took for me to launch a digital product. And it was really ridiculous now that I think about it, because I'm like, you create videos and video content all the time. What's the problem? Because I was honestly a little intimidated by the process. I was, well, are people going to really want to buy this thing, knowing that this is the full solution for people? And I had to get out of my own way and say, listen, you have permission to do this. Just launch the thing already. And you can continue to clean it up or make it better while it's already out there. I mean, think about how many times, Apple launches a phone, I'm team iPhone, and they launch a phone and you download the new upgrades and there's all kinds of kinks and bugs. They're not waiting for the kinks and bugs to be fixed before they release you this $1,000 plus phone. No, they release it and they just tell you, and we've gotten used to it, it's just par for the course. It's not going to be perfect.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that because I remember when Disney launched their app and all the kinks
Yes.
that were in it. But honey, people still, they might have complained, but they were still downloading it.
You know what that tells me? We give more grace to outside factors than we do to ourselves. Think about that. We're willing to deal with the fact that I had to pay for this app. It's probably not working, or there's all kinds of bugs and kinks. And you're just kind of like, oh, well, it's new, it's just launching. But yet you don't give the same grace to your own business or to yourself. But we'll give it to outside factors. We'll give it to other companies. We'll give it to other people, but we won't extend that same grace to ourselves. I think sometimes, as my friend said it once, she's like, I looked in the mirror and realized my hater wasn't the person next to me. I was my biggest hater.
Oh,
And we have to
oh,
move from
yes.
being our biggest hater, our biggest critic, and really say, I'm going to give you grace today to do this thing perfectly imperfect.
I
And we're
love
just going
that.
to work on progressing this so that it can get better. Because I know for a lot of women that I work with, the reason why they don't show up is because they're waiting for it to be all together. They're waiting for it to be perfect. And I struggled with that too. But I realized perfection is a lie, fear is a bully, and you just have to go ahead and do it afraid.
That's true. And that's the high achiever syndrome. I
Hmm.
think because one of the things I had to confront in myself was the reason I was a high achiever wasn't because I was so passionate and so motivated and I'm just so sold out, full out, running toward what God has told me I'm supposed to have. The reason I was a high achiever was because I was trying to compensate for what
Mm.
my ego had convinced me was a perceived flaw. So I
Wow.
had to make good. The jury was still out as to whether I should be acquitted or not for being me.
Wow.
You
Mm.
know,
Hmm.
whether they were going to drop the case or not, they were still out deliberating. And here I am trying to prove to the judge, the jury in my head that I'm good enough.
Yeah.
And so I really had to really, as a matter of fact, uh, kind of recently, a couple of months ago, actually, I remember God saying to me, I don't want your high achiever. And I was almost like, like Scooby Doo, you don't want my high achiever. He's like, no, she's not welcome because she gets in my way.
Mm.
She makes you feel like what you are achieving, what you have is a result of what you've done,
Wow.
that
That's
you've
so good.
earned it. When I want to give it to you,
Mm.
I want
That's
to
so
help you
good.
to help you to understand I'm the one that's doing it anyway. And even the high achiever is denying the real brilliance because the real brilliance is the you behind the black curtain that's working the knobs.
Yeah.
The brilliant you is the one that got the job. The brilliant you is the one that created your own rescue. It's the brilliance, it's the part of you that your ego thinks is not enough, that really is the
Hmm.
mover and shaker behind all of this. And I want to give her some airtime.
That is so good. I remember where I had to transition from the 8-year-old girl to the woman.
Oh,
And
yes.
I
Talk
remember
about that, girl.
One thing that I talk about in a book that I have coming out, Visibility is Power, is going to be a book. And one of the things I talk about in the book is in my journey of finding my voice again, I had to find the 8-year-old third grade girl again who told her parents after bringing home her progress report card, and they're looking at not the grades, but focusing on what the teacher said. And as you can guess, all of my teachers said the same thing. Great student, just talks a lot. And my West Indian father asked me, what do you have to talk about? And I said, without skipping a beat, I just believe I have something to say. And I had to find that little girl who said very boldly, unashamedly, that I believe I have something to say. But how many of you know that I couldn't take the 8-year-old to the boardrooms that I was going into? She served me well for a purpose, for a point in my life. But at some point, I had to progress, see, not perfection, progress from the 8-year-old girl to now the woman who is Roshanda Pratt, not the 8-year-old
Hmm.
girl any longer. I was grateful for our time together. I was grateful for her helping me to discover my voice, but I couldn't take her along the journey and where I was going. Because how many of you know an 8-year-old capacity is very different from someone who is an adult. So she
Hmm.
served me well for a time being, but I had to move past that.
It sounds like you had to grow her up.
I
Grow.
did.
You had to grow up the voice because the voice
Wow.
was the
Yes.
gift anyway. That was your gift,
Hmm.
but you had to grow that voice up
So
so
good.
it could serve. Yeah.
Yes, that is very good. And I love how you said that. And I'm going to give you credit the first time. After that, it's mine. I'm just kidding.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I know one of the things that also, when I was listening to you, and you were talking about visibility, and you said stop being a hidden figure. And I remember writing down, or what came to my mind, writing down in my mind, stop being a hidden figure and a counterfeit cousin.
Oh,
Step
that's
into the light.
good.
Step into the light. You
Yes.
know?
Yes, we have a lot of people. We know that movie Hidden Figure was created to tell the story of um, African American women who are working in NASA during a time in our country where women, and especially women of color, were segregated and not treated as equals. And that story deserves and needed to be told.
Mm-hmm.
However, we've had some changes, and I know we can, not to get into politics, that there are some things that still are not right, right? We could agree
Right.
on that.
We can agree.
But there is there's been some progression and things that have happened in our country. And as Madam C.J. Walker says, she's one of my favorite entrepreneurs, says, I got my start by giving myself a start. And many people are not even giving themselves a start to come out of the shadows. So we have a culture of people here in a new decade, a new millennium, who are still hidden, who are still
Yeah.
hiding their purpose, their wisdom. You have people who will walk in a room and know that they could solve the problem, and for whatever reason, won't tell people who they are or what they do. We still have people who are comfortable with not being seen, know that they have a platform to be seen, know that they are the next thought leader, but, I want to remain humble. I don't want to, do this, that, and the other. People still struggling with the little kid. And I just really want to tell people that your visibility is power. Being seen is power. And you have to embrace the fact that you deserve to be seen and heard.
You are so right. As a matter of fact, my coach called me on the carpet, and that's why I know coaching is just as much of God as anything else. My
Yes.
coach called me on the carpet. She said, "Stop giving people an ebook when you know they need you to coach them."
Wow.
I was like, she said, "You are doing them the greatest disservice
Yes.
when you give them an ebook, like, and it's a band-aid and they got a gaping wound."
That's so good. People don't stand sometimes in the full solution. And I've had to learn that too. We drip people things because we say this is easier for them to digest, or this is, quote, what they can afford. But what I realize is, people pay for what they want. These are
Y-
the same people that may not have money all year, but Black Friday, they're able to find funds to go buy that new flat screen TV.
Oh, won't they?
And I've often told people that if you're investing more on outer things than inner things, then there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because the greatest thing that you can do is invest in you. That's one of the greatest things that I think you can do is invest in you, whatever that looks like, whether that's, investment in your mental health, your physical body, your spiritual life. I think that's one of the greatest things that you can do is make the investment in you, because a better you means a better people around you.
Mm-hmm.
So kudos to your coach for calling you out on that, because that's one of the things that I see a lot of times in entrepreneur space, especially for high achieving women, that they struggle with is that whole thought of I'm worth being invested and I'm worth telling people this is what I can help you with. I'm an expert in this, and this is what the investment is to get your solution.
Indeed, indeed. I was thinking about that, and I agree with you. I really don't think it's really a money problem.
Mm,
It is a permission problem.
yeah.
Because like you said, people will. I'm telling you, I've seen so many people that, as far as I knew, did not have enough money
Mm-hmm.
to scrape up anything. But yet, when they went to a homeowner seminar and were told they needed to put a certain amount down, they called the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker to get that money.
Right.
And so it really is, I think we really need to have a transformation of how we see ourselves, and also where we put value. We put so much value in things that depreciate. And I think
Mm.
that's where a lot of us are finding ourselves, even during this coronavirus pandemic, where all of our creature comforts and modern conveniences are being called into question. All the things that we put money into, put
Mm-hmm.
put time into, put confidence in, that were really externals. And
Yes.
now we're having to sit in our self isolation, our self quarantine, our social distancing, and we have to get real about ourselves and what we truly believe about ourselves. And really, because what we wrestle with is what we have not resolved.
That's so true. I was telling somebody the other day, I said, I believe this quarantine is a time of rest and reset. And
Yes. Oh,
I, I
girl.
I really believe that. I really believe that this is a time of rest and reset. And when I say rest, I'm not necessarily thinking about physical rest, though that's
Right.
needed for a lot of us. But I think rest in the fact of trusting God, trusting what you know to be true. We can get so busy in things and totally forget the creator of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
going back to that.
And I dare say, I think the struggle is we don't really know. We thought we believed. It's like we've given lip service to belief.
Mm-hmm.
But in a recent seminar that I did with some people called Confronting Your Valley, we had to sit there and really admit to each other that we are unbelieving believers.
Oh my goodness.
That when
Wow.
it really comes down to it, we believe in what we can control, what we can do. We
Mm-hmm.
give God credit for it. We're real religious about it. But the real truth is, if you were to take all these things away and we were just left with God, do we believe
Right.
that we're enough for Him to really move on our behalf? Do we believe that we're enough, that He would move heaven and earth to make sure that we're okay? Do we really believe it? Do we really believe? And even when it comes to our relationships, because I deal with a lot of women when it comes to their intimate relationships, because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of
Mm-hmm.
high achieving women have real difficulties in connecting intimately
Mm.
because of that very trust thing. Do we really believe that we're enough that somebody would want to commit to us, that would want to spend the rest of their lives with us? Or do we feel like we have to prove it? And so for many of us, we think that the reason why God is blessing us is because we go to church every Sunday. It's because we
Yeah.
do these things, not realizing that we are enough because He moved
Hmm.
every barrier that would hinder us from being born.
It becomes works. And I think, especially for a
Yes.
high achieving women, I worked in television news for 20 years. And one of the things that I had to get out of my DNA, out of my fiber, I've worked in television news. Well, actually, I've loved television news since I was in the fourth grade. My dad would make me watch the news. He told me, as an American citizen, it's my duty to know what's going on in my country and my community. So he would make me watch the news. So I've loved television news since the fourth grade, and started working in television while I was in college. So I worked in TV for 20 years. Here's the thing: I had to get out of my DNA, along with creating plan Bs. I had to get out of my DNA this whole thing of works. That if I do this, this happens. But I
Mm-hmm.
have to do this first in order for that to happen. And I really had to hold on. And even during this thing of coronavirus in our country, is holding on to the promise of, it's not by works, at least anyone should boast. I can't work
Yes.
hard enough for God's blessing and favor. I can't, because He will always outgive my doing every single time. So it's like moving from a state of, I am not going to toil for this, because scripture talks about toil, um, that the blessing of the Lord maketh rich and addeth no sorrow or toil with it. It's the
Mm-hmm.
blessing of the Lord that makes you rich. I can't work hard enough for that. And so I had to get out of that mindset of toiling and working hard. And it's so interesting, because just this morning in my prayer time, which I thought was so interesting, now that we're talking about this, that God reminded me that in Psalm 23. And in Psalm 23, it talks about, do not wear yourself out to get rich. Do not trust in your own cleverness.
Mm.
If that
Wow.
is not a sign, I don't know what is.
And and I'm very, I tread very lightly because I know there are people who are suffering very deeply
Right.
right now, and
Mm-hmm.
and all over the world, it's like we're going through another big evolution.
Yes.
Where things are, it's like everything is being shaken.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, our belief system, our economy, the way we're used to doing business, the way we're used to connecting with people, the way we're used to showing up in the world, the things that have been invented, our dependence on certain things, everything is being called into question. Every
Yes.
single thing. So I know it's scary. I know it is, even for the most chill person.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
is scary. But I also, it's almost like we're going through this global sanctification. And I hate to use
Yes.
vernacular that might feel very churchy, because I know my listeners, span different beliefs and whatever. But if they'll stay with me, they'll get what I mean. But
Yes. It's good.
it's like there's a cleansing where we're really kind of getting getting cleansed from the superficial and really getting down to what really matters, that we really are our brother's keeper. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter whether we're on this side or whether we're across the pond, that what we do and what we deal with has a ricochet, a rumble, a residual effect.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
and I really believe all the infighting, and it had reached such a noise level that it was driving us all crazy. All the vitriol, all the fighting, all the finger pointing. It was getting so a level of nastiness like I've never ever experienced like that. You couldn't get away from it on the internet. You know,
Yes.
just the meanness.
Mm-hmm.
of people that I felt like we needed just, somebody just going, stop.
A hard reset.
That's it. And I feel
Yes.
like that's what's happening nationwide, globally. We're all getting a hard reset.
Mm-hmm. I
And I
agree.
don't want to waste this hard reset because
Yes.
like some people are like, well, when this pandemic is over, we'll go back to life as normal. But that's not true. Our
We
lives will
shouldn't.
be forever changed. And you're right. We shouldn't. I don't want to, Roshanda. I don't want to go back to life the same way.
I agree. Yes.
And I'm hoping that with this podcast and what you're doing, that people will really take the time
Mm-hmm.
for the CEO of their lives, who I call the eternal you, to have a
Yes.
conversation with you and to
Mm-hmm.
really get down to really who are you
Yeah.
and what do you really believe, and it being predicated on something that's eternal, that part of you that does not change. And I think that's what I'm being challenged to, is to get what Michelle Obama calls your inner steady,
Yeah.
where you
Mm-hmm.
really get really truly grounded in the eternal you, the you that
Mm-hmm.
is not affected, not swayed, not altered by any external factor, because that's the you that is needed to navigate life. And that's the you that's called to make a difference.
I agree. That's amazing.
Oh, girl, this is so good. So, what would you want the takeaway from our conversation to be for our listeners?
I think the major takeaway for people is to understand is your visibility is power. It's a simple message that really came from heaven that has such power and so much implication to it in what's happening in our culture. I mean, think about it. Businesses are having to pivot. People are having to do things differently, which means you got to show up differently. People who were doing business one way have had to learn within the last couple of weeks online business, how to take their business online if they weren't already doing that. And so understanding that your visibility is power. You hear stories of churches who didn't, or for whatever reason, embrace live stream. So they just closed down service. And that's not understanding the fact that, again, your visibility, us seeing you, is powerful. And so people taking on visibility is power, but taking on the mantra of, I cannot be on the sidelines. I can't afford to be on the sidelines because people, the impact, the influence, and the income that I want to make, all of those things rely on me showing up, period.
Showing up, period. So,
Yes.
now, how can our listeners get in contact with you?
Sure. I'm across all social media platforms as The Roshow Live, TheRoShoLive. They can also follow me on YouTube. If you love the content that I shared here on the show, I have a lot of great content and videos on my YouTube page. And so I would love for you guys to follow me and find me, The Roshow Live, on YouTube.
And we're going to have all that information in our show notes as well, in the description. So, listeners, listen, I want you to know, if no one has told you you are worthy, you are worth it. You are more than enough. Bye. You have just listened to the Enough Factor podcast with your host, Suzette Vernon. To get notified of new episodes or to dig deeper into today's topic, become a subscriber. And while you're at it, tell us how we're doing and what topics you're interested in. We appreciate your feedback and your reviews. Until next time, remember, you are worthy, you are worth it, you are enough.